Why did your family move to Liberty? Who prompted that?
Well, see what happened is when I was 4.5 years old, that's when I had my accident. I was run over in New York, in Brooklyn, actually. And, well, I had this 4.5-year-old child that was an invalid. And I think they wanted to get me out of the city. So they moved up to a little area called Divine Corners. And my father became the postmaster. He bought the building for the post office, and he was the postmaster. He couldn't read or write English, my father. He was the postmaster. So, you know, that was my father. And we lived in Divine Corners for a couple of years, and that didn't work out. And then we moved to a farm, and that didn't work out. My father was not much of a farmer. He tried raising chickens, you know, from chicks, and you have to keep the temperature moderated. It has to be a certain temperature. If it goes too low, they die. If it goes too high, they die. Either too low or too high, and all those chickens used to die. So we realized that was not for him. And then moved to Liberty. And in Liberty, he became a window cleaner. He bought a route from somebody and became a window cleaner. And he did that for a number of years, and we used to have rooms available for rent in our house for the summer. We bought a house, and there was a bungalow on the property, and we used to rent most of the house out in the bungalow in the summertime to tourists, you know, and stayed there all summer. And that's how the family made a living. And my mother was a very industrious woman, and she made our clothing and did all the work around the house. And, I don't know what my father did besides play pinochle, but that's all I remember was him playing pinochle.
The window washing route went away?
It didn't work out. Nothing ever worked out with my father. Then he became a shoemaker. That was his trade. When he went into the army, Jewish guys were not fighting men. They made him into lackeys, and he became a shoemaker, which was mostly polishing the boots of the officers, you know, and things like that in the army. A low-grade job. And I think maybe that's one of the things that made him run away and get the hell out of the army and come to this country. It was probably the type of work that they gave him in the army. So he became a shoemaker in Liberty, and he could have made a living at that. Why he didn't, I don't know. But that didn't work out either. He never really worked at anything that worked out. And he used to go to New York, my father, and work as a presser in the ladies' garment business. But that was very highly seasonal. It used to happen in the spring mostly. You know. A couple of months a year he would work, and then he'd have a fight with the boss, because if the men's room wasn't clean enough, he would go to the boss and complain to tell him, get the hell out of here, I don't need you anymore, you know, and stuff like that. And he'd get himself fired. And I never could hold the job, never could keep a business going. So.
When your mother talked to you, in what language did she speak?
Oh, my mother spoke English. When they spoke between themselves, my father and mother spoke mostly Yiddish. But when they spoke to the kids, you know, it was a combination of Yiddish and English, but mostly English. When they spoke about the neighbor's wife who was having an affair with the postman, they lapsed into Polish, so the kids couldn't understand, you know. But, basically, they spoke English. You know, both of them spoke with serious accents, but they spoke English mostly to the kids. And among themselves, they spoke Yiddish.
So your father was a great joke teller and was a great singer.
My father used to appear on the stage, on the Jewish stage. He was you know, like an actor on the Jewish stage, mostly a comedian. And women loved him. He was a good dancer and had a very nice personality, as opposed to his sons, and was very charming. Nobody would ever accuse any of his sons of being charming, you know, but he was charming.
How about your mother? What do you remember?
Well, you know, my mother died when I was 13. And I remember my mother always working. no matter what hour of the day or night, she was working, very similar to your mother. Your mother was like a chip off the old block. My mother could do everything, and your mother could do everything. And like I said, she made our clothing, used to carry out the ashes from the basement. Why my father didn't do it, I don't know, but my mother was always carrying out the ashes and spreading them on the road, because we had a dirt road, and in the spring it turned to a quagmire, when the snows melted off, so hopefully the ashes would make it cut down on the mud somewhat. I don't think it ever did, but she used to carry the buckets out and throw it on the road,
And what were those the ashes from?
Coal. We had a coal stove, a central heating plant in the house. So when she was alive, I never remember too many problems, I remember there was always enough food on the table. I don't know how it happened. My mother, for many years, worked like a chambermaid also, cleaning homes and working in hotels, cleaning the rooms and things like that.
That was before she was married?
That my father didn't make. So.
But that when she worked as a chambermaid was after you were born?
Yeah.
When she was married to your father?
Yeah, she worked when we were young kids. She worked as a chambermaid. She's a very industrious woman.
What are your boyhood memories of your brothers?
Well, I always admired Milt. But I somehow or other had the feeling that he was smart. And I did respect him. Sam was more a follower of Milt's. And neither Milt or Sam were my friend when I was a kid. They were friendly with themselves, but I was too far separated from them by, I guess, by age, and they didn't have too much to do with me. When they were Boy Scouts and I joined, they quit because they didn't want to be in the same troop with their brother. Both of them were good athletes. Sam played football on the high school football team. I remember he broke his nose, played anyway. They had a game with Stone King Highway. A bus was going from the school. I got on the bus and went to see Sam play football. And Stone King Highway beat Liberty. And I was sitting on the bus and Sam came out and his face was swollen with that broken nose. And I reached out my hand to congratulate him for a good game. And my hand hit his nose. Well, the window of the bus was open where I had stuck my hand out. He gave me a shot in the jaw. The hardest I've ever been punched in my life,
I remember my mother telling me that he got his teeth knocked out playing football and was scared to tell your father
Yeah.
and held them in with his tongue.
Well, the tooth came out, and he pushed it back in, and kept his tongue, kept the tooth in position. And after a while, I don't think it ever really rooted right, because the tooth eventually turned black. But he had the use of the tooth for a couple of years that way. He didn't want to tell my father that it happened playing football, because my father could never understand that football business anyway. I mean, why you'd want to go out there to get hurt? That was not his way of doing things. He was European. They didn't play ball. They just managed to get by and get enough to eat.
But after your mother died, what happened to the family?
Well, my two brothers had already left the house. No, Milt had left the house. Milt was 16 and I was 13 when it happened. Sam must have been 15. Sam was still in school. Sam waited until he was 16 and then he quit school and went to New York. Milt lived with an aunt, my mother's sister. Lived with them for a while. Sam went to live with a family. I don't know how he got connected with the family. Strange family, but I don't remember how he got to know them or meet them, but he moved in with them and used to pay them. You know, he went to work and used to pay them. And it was just your mother and myself that were with my father. And, and my father took up with, you know, different women. And somehow or other there was no provision for your mother and myself with these arrangements. So I lived in a furnished room and your mother lived in a furnished room. We lived with strange people. We paid them, I don't remember how much, but a couple of dollars a week to live there. And took care of our own food and all that business. And we did that until I went off to college. And your mother went to work. Your mother went to work, I think she was 17 when she went to work. You know, she left school, went to work so she could support herself.
You were 13 years old. You're providing your own meals,
Well,
making a few dollars a week to pay the rent.
My father used to send us money orders, and we used to pay the rent, and, you know, budget the amount of money that he gave us so that we would have enough money to pay for food. And we didn't have entertainment or anything like that. It was just food and maybe an occasional pair of shoes or something like that we'd have to buy. But that's how we budgeted the money, and until I went off to college.
Did you see your older brothers during this period?
Yeah, I used to see my brothers. Not on a regular basis. You know, Milt got married when he was 21. And I guess it was my last year of high school when he got married. And Sam lived in Brooklyn. We used to visit each other every couple of weeks or so. But actually, we had sort of drifted apart. You know, we didn't really see each other that much. It's only after I went to college, I used to have periods where I got short of money. I used to have to write to Milt to ask him if he could send me $10. And Milt, of course, always sent me the $10. And it was not until, actually until we went into business together that we resumed our friendship. Milt and Sam were always more friendly with each other. They got along better with each other than they did with me.
So after your mother died, how frequently did the four kids get together? Because you have a great sense of family.
No. Never happened except when Milt got married or something like that, but we didn't have any occasions where the four of us were together. I very rarely saw your mother. Very rarely. We just didn't have any family life after my mother died.
After you go into business together, that changes though.
Well, sort of. Sort of. Because when I got married, I told Milt I was getting married. And that's not what he expected. He expected that I would get the stamp of approval from him, that I would bring my prospective bride to him, and he would maybe like Alexa Hente approve or not approve. And I didn't do that. I just told him to get married. That was it. He never liked my wife. He always resented her because felt that he was mad at me for that, and he took it out on her. So we didn't used to see each other socially. Once in a while we saw each other socially. And Sam and Milt saw each other a lot. But I didn't, Sam and I didn't hit it off that much in business because Sam had wealthier friends than I had, and he had different ideas than I did. And actually, Milt and I didn't get along that well in business. We were always arguing. Milt was very strong-minded, and I guess I am too. And Sam always sided with Milt. If Milt said that it's nighttime now, if Milt said it, Sam would agree with him. So it was like, when it came to a vote, I was always outvoted. And they had more in common with each other than they did with me.
I was going to ask you a question about this. My recollection of Uncle Milt is that he liked to say things once. And Uncle Sammy was stubborn.
Uncle Sammy was stubborn but better natured. See, Milt was tough. And if you didn't do things his way, the expression, it's my way or the highway, that's the way he liked things to happen. And it didn't always happen that way, and we had many periods where we weren't on speaking terms, because he didn't have it his own way, and he didn't like that. He didn't like not having it his own way. And you know, in business, there has to be give and take. And he didn't like the taking. He liked the giving, but not the taking. So in business, we had our moments where we didn't get along. But you know, we were good for each other in business. We all seemed to know what we were doing. And of course, Milt was I would say, he gets the most credit for our success, because his thinking was the best of all of us. But Sam executed, and I did what I had to do, you know, as far as getting the mortgage money and running the office and all that kind of thing. I never was part of the building scheme. Just Milt and Sam were the fellows that put up the buildings. I never had any part of that. I was the one that ran the office and bought the supplies and paid the people and all that sort of thing. But you know, things change as you go along. We were very successful in our own little way, and Milt had sort of lost interest in the business. He gave it his all, and there was a parable on television that seemed to have affected Milt's and mine thinking. It was a series on television. You know, so television wasn't as sophisticated then as it is today. And it was a show we used to watch that probably I wouldn't watch today. But it was a famous actor from Hollywood, a fellow by the name of Adolph Monju. And he used to act in these skits where they portrayed sort of parables of things that had happened years ago. And one of the parables had to do with a king and his entourage driving through the countryside on a hot summer day. And they come to a ramshackle farm, and the farmer dashes out and feeds the horses and brings refreshments to the king and his guests. And the king is, you know, sort of very happy with the way this fellow was so hospitable, and said to the poor farmer, "Is there anything I can do for you to make your life better or happier?" And the farmer thought, well, if I had more land, then I would be more prosperous and I would be happier. The king said to him, well, tomorrow morning, starting at dawn, whatever distance you traverse on foot will be yours. The farmer was so excited he couldn't sleep all night. Got up at the crack of dawn, put a heavy sack of grain on his shoulder, open, so the droplets would fall on the land that he traversed. And he didn't walk, he ran. And he showed the sun coming up and expiring, and he passed the creek. He was dying of thirst, but if you stop and drink, you're not covering territory. He just covered mile after mile, mile after mile. After a while, he was so tired he couldn't run anymore. He was on his hands and knees, but he was still dropping those droplets every so often to show he'd been there. And then it shows, it suddenly becomes dark. It's all over, and he drops dead. And the moral of the story was, how much land does a man need? And Milt and I discussed that thing. And we come as far as we wanted to go in business. And I said to him, you know, I think it's time to wind down. And Sam wanted to start building shopping centers. And Milt and I, first of all, we were more conservative than Sam. And we felt we didn't want to jeopardize what we had. Because in order to build shopping centers, you have to sign for it personally. And if it doesn't work out, well, everything you worked for is gone. And we didn't want to do that. So that's when we decided that, we're going to break the place up. And Milt and I were ready to retire. Sam wasn't ready to retire. Sam went on to do, pretty big things. He was very successful in his own right. And I think that Sam was very hurt by Milt, I think, because Sam really adored him. I respected Milt, I was not one of his fans. Because Milt knew how to be cruel when he wanted to, and he did a good job at it. But Sam always forgave him. And Sam was the best natured one of the three of us anyway. Sam was basically a good guy because he was always friendly with our tenants. And when somebody had to tell a tenant, if you don't pay the rent, we're going to have to take proceedings against you, Sam would say, Leo, you call that fellow and tell him he doesn't pay the rent. But Sam wouldn't do it because he didn't want the fellow to think badly of him. But I didn't give a shit. I would be the guy that would make the call or write the letter or whatever had to be done, you know.
What was your relationship with your father after your mother died?
Not much. Not much. We very rarely saw him. And it was not really a normal relationship with my father after my mother died. My father was always into his own thing. And he was not, he's a guy that should not have had a family. You know, he should have been a single guy.
Yet after you became an adult, you and your brother supported him.
We felt sorry for the guy. We always felt that he did the best he could with his limited ability. That's the way we felt about my father. You know, we never hated my father. At the time, we didn't resent him as much as we did when we got older. At the time, we thought that's the way of life. But as we got older and smarter, we realized that he could have done better. But that wouldn't have stopped us from supporting him. We didn't hate the guy. We just felt that he didn't know how to have a family, shouldn't have had a family. And it was unfortunate my mother died and he survived, and we bore the brunt of that.
Yet as you became a husband and a father and a grandfather, the image of him has to be changing over the years.
Well, I see the way I reacted to my kids and the way he reacted to his kids was altogether different. But maybe that's because of the way he reacted that I tried not to emulate him, you know. We tried not to emulate him in any respect, my father. I mean, we were brought up under conditions where we could have been hoods. We were tough enough and desperate enough to go around robbing and beating up people we never did. You know, I don't know why. I mean, certainly we had great need for money, but we always managed to do it the honest way. The worst we ever did was maybe in New York City jump the turnstile without putting a nickel in. That's about the worst I ever remember doing, you know, crime-wise. And we could have certainly been involved. There were other people in our circumstances. That's what they were doing. Got a gun and held people up and things like that. It never even occurred to us to do that. That was not our way of doing it. He had a hard life anyway, my father. You know, because he never had two nickels to rub together. Of course, that was his own fault.
I remember this old man coming from Miami to visit with a new wife every time he came, who was always well dressed.
Yeah,
would talk about dancing.
Well, you know, the last wife he had, she came from a more well-to-do background, and she sort of subsidized him. You know, she bought a place in Delray Beach, an apartment they lived in. It was very nice, and gave him a way of life that he was not accustomed to. She came from Toronto, and he would go up there, and they treated him very well. And they used to take him to the country club, you know, and he loved that atmosphere, and the health club, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And the last few years of his life were a very good time for him. But he had been through quite a few women before that.
But you didn't feel any sense of resentment toward him?
No. No, we knew we had been shortchanged. No question about that. But I never dwelt on that. And you know, like your mother is more apt to dwell on it than I am. You know, when I talked to her on the phone, she told me about her aunts and uncles. that changed their mind, that didn't pay too much attention to us, you know. When I was a kid, I used to think to myself, what the hell do I need them to take care of me? I'm going to do it myself. See, because your mother was more vulnerable than I was. She was younger, you know, and possibly could have used some warmth, more warmth than I was looking for. You know, so
She has some resentment about her father.
she should have. She should have. And probably if I had a brain, I would have resentment too, but I never did. I never did. You know, when I told my father, Pop, I'm going to college, they looked at me and said, well, how are you going to pay for it? I said, I'll find a way. And I did. That was the extent of the help I got from them. Nothing. It wasn't that, I'll give you a few dollars, nothing. I said I'd find a way. I said, well, figure it out. Find a way. And I did. I did. Of course, college to me was like a blur anyway. Because all the other guys were having dates and all that. I was painting walls and cutting grass, you know, and stuff like that, and trying to get my work done in school. So I can't exactly say I enjoyed my college education, but I got some sort of an education anyway, and gave me an exposure that I never had before. You know, I was a roommate. I had in the same building I lived in, a fellow by the name of George Wallace lived, and I got to know him. Did I ever tell you the story about George Wallace?
You told me about him living in your dormitory and his brother.
George Wallace was a farm boy, and he was a couple of years older than I was, and he used to smoke a long cigar. They used to call him governor. What the hell is this governor crap? Someday I'm going to be governor, he said. Someday I'm going to be governor of Alabama. And when I met him, I was a freshman. I was just fresh down there. Maybe I'd been down there a week or two. And he comes over to me and says, freshman, you ever been on a snipe hunt? Well, I said, I don't know you too well. I don't know whether I should ask you or not, but I sort of like you. I'm going to invite you on a snipe hunt. Me, two other guy yokels from the north, we're going out on a snipe hunt. There are about 6 of us in a car. They take us out to the country, about 12, 13 miles out in the country at night. And they give us burlap bags, and they're standing there with flashlights. We're going to drive the snipe. You guys stay there with the bags like this, and we're going to drive the snipe into your bags. And you know what happened? We heard slam of the car door, and they were gone. And we looked at each other and said, okay, we've had it. And we had to walk back to where we came from. You know, there was no transportation. We walked back the 12 miles, whatever it was. I didn't think it was that funny. So when we got back, I didn't sleep that night. I went over to George Wallace's room. He was gone already. He had gone to class. I went in his room, and I opened up the window, and I threw everything I could get my hands on out the window into the creek. You know, his mattresses, all his blankets, sheets, towels, everything I could put my hand on into the creek, you know. We came home from school, going, who did that? I said, I did. What the hell is going on here? He says, George, that's a northern sniper. Well, he smiled, he stuck out his hand, and said, you red bastard, he said to me, you're a man. And he shook my hand, and he was my friend. He and I got along very well after that, very well. As a matter of fact, when he was governor of Alabama, I used to talk to him on the phone. He said, why don't you come down here? Find you a job here in Montgomery. Work for the government. You know, he says, you can do accounting work, finance, you can get a good job. I get you a good job down here working for the government. I said, no, George, I'm doing pretty well in my own business, and I wish you a lot of good luck. And you know, he was shot eventually, George Wallace. He was a gutsy guy,
No racial overtones?
With me, no. But this guy was a redneck, no question about it. towards the end of his life, he became a friend of the blacks. You know, after he was governor and after he was shot, I guess he had time to think of something. He repented and really acted differently towards the blacks down there than he did when he was in school. I remember we used to have a black guy who picked up our laundry. The stuff used to come back dingy and, you know, not white and not pressed correctly. I remember him saying to this black guy, he said, "Nigga, you bring my laundry back here looking like this next week, I'm gonna bore you a new asshole," he said to him. And he meant it. Next week, George Wallace's stuff came back immaculate. Mine came back yellow and creased the same way as before. You know, I don't know how to talk to the guy. He knew how to talk to him, George.
Hey,
But he was not a student, but he was a very worldly guy. And worldly in the fact that he was streetwise. And I guess that's one of the characteristics that got him so far politically. And he knew what people wanted to hear.